System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.
TMK for Inner City Left. Today is Sunday, August 25th. I am here with Amoja Lil Tanky, Sumler geopolitical expert and Inner City Left co-founder. Tanky, what's up, my guy? How are you doing? It's been like a week. Been a week.
I'm still basking in the brilliance of Dr. CBS. That was man, I love it. I love it when our guests get free, man. For real.
If you haven't, I would definitely go back and check out our interview with Professor CBS, Dr. CBS. We talked about a lot of good things, and we were really happy to have her on, and hopefully we'll have her on again. I wanted to talk. You mentioned this to me today, and this is something we post about often on Inner City Left. And I have a tweet here. You sent it to me, and I want to read it to you, and I want to discuss a little bit further, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. Afshin Ratansi on Twitter. The F-35C takeoff from flight deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, which we know has just been moved into the Mediterranean. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the USA $5 billion 1984 nuclear warship USS Abraham Lincoln arrives off coast of Iran to reinforce the G side in Gaza, and it is estimated 2 million per day and this is a profit from Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Boeing, Base Systems, Raytheon, so on and so forth. We've talked a lot about this money getting sent to Ukraine, and money gets sent here, and money gets sent to Taiwan, and money gets made here. And there's also sort of this idea of America spends a lot of money on the military, but we are seeing now that I don't want to say unpredictability, but the predicted attack from Iran has everyone with all of their guns out, all of their gunships out.
Yeah.
Why is it so expensive? We talked about this, but why is it so expensive for these aircraft carriers to move around, and why is it such a huge cost we're seeing on the United States?
I mean, here's the thing. When you buy nice things, they require nice things to stay nice. I mean, that's the simplest way I
can't take the Ferrari to the local dealership.
You know what I'm saying?
The local
Ferrari
mechanic
ain't gonna work long. You throwing that E87 in there. You know what I'm saying? But in a real way, you know what I'm saying? There are very few things, very few military assets that cost what an aircraft carrier cost. And again, that's just even in peacetime, what it costs to keep these things. So let's talk about that, right? You have the fuel, which is a very expensive fuel because then an aircraft carrier uses nuclear fuels. You can't just fill it up with oil and keep going, right? That doesn't work. But there are things on that aircraft carrier that will need oil. You know what I'm saying? There are people that need food. There's all kinds of things. You need ammunition, as you're doing your deterrence missions. It's not an infinity box like in a video game. Every time you fire anything, that's one less that you got. And you're there for months at a time. Let's say you're out there and you're just doing interdictions with the Houthis or, missile defense with the Houthis. Every single time you fire, that's one less that you have. And where can you go and get another one, right? We're not talking about Walmart type consumerism. We're talking about the military industrial complex. These are some of the stuff you can only get from Boeing again. Some of the stuff you can only get from General Dynamics again. And they may have offices all over the world, but how much of any one thing might they have? And it's not absolutely true that they have offices all over the world. They may operate all around the world. Let's say Israel and Egypt have every single thing that is needed to replenish an American aircraft carrier. It would be a bit of a jump to assume that that's true, but maybe it's true. Okay. So you still have to leave the theater, right? So if you're in the Persian Gulf, that means exiting the Persian Gulf, right? coming down the Arabian Ocean and the Indian Ocean, coming back up the Red Sea, passing through, the what is it, the Suez Canal. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a bit of a trek before you can get back to a place where you can even reload your things. And of course, going back to Israel is no sure bet right now, as Israel is under fire, right? And also, people got salaries. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what it costs to have me here. And not everybody on a ship is even in the military. Sometimes you have contractors, right? You have a number. You should think about an aircraft carrier as a city in the sea, right? With all of the things that you need to support a city. I mean, clean drinking water, for God's sake, right? I mean, all of these
sanitation. I mean, how much does it cost to run a freaking cruise ship, for God's
right.
sakes?
And
It's got to be way more expensive than that.
It's just peacetime. Imagine what it's like when you're really under fire. The costs are exponential then, right? So even when nothing happens, it costs an incredible amount to have these assets in place, all to protect ostensibly Israel. And the question about that is, where is the inherent national security risk to the United States, right? This is the one thing that Donald Trump talks about. Not that, he doesn't do the same thing and wouldn't have done exactly the same thing. I mean, he sat in with Bibi and they're the ones who killed Soleimani, who was the big general in Iran, and again, Trump would be like, well, I prevented a war. No, you didn't. You did your half measure, and the people that wanted war continue to push for that. And this time he'd absolutely give them that because his campaign is so beholden to these donors, as are the Democrats, by the way. And so that's why those kind of policies never really change. It's not even about ideology, although there are definitely affirmed and avowed Zionists. Biden was one. Kamala married a Zionist. Affirmed Zionist. This is not me using a disparaging term. These are terms that these people define themselves as.
Her husband has mentioned it and said she was also, she would do anything in her power to protect Israel.
Right.
So it's not, again, it's not like,
it's not a controversial term. Yeah, I'm not using it pejorative. This is just the reality. And Trump is the exact same situation. He considers himself a Christian Zionist. And so those are things that aren't going to change. But it's an immense cost. It's an immense cost. And I don't think it's one that can be borne forever. There's a report that there's already been cutbacks on 17 different naval vessels just because it's too expensive. And again, even though there's this latest batch of preemptive strikes from Israel, which, by the way, why is it always a preemptive strike when Israel does it and not an aggressive act, right? Whereas no one else gets to preempt, they're just attacking, and Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel not only has the right to defend itself, according to American power, but the ability to preempt danger, even if that
Minority Report.
Right. Even if that preemption leads to the death of non-affiliated Lebanese people that didn't have nothing to do with anything other than they live in the city,
Can't attack people's sovereign. Can't attack people's sovereign nations. Right. Doesn't work like that, and you can't. Again, it goes back to their explanation of the hospitals. Hamas was there. Okay, where's the evidence? You have to present this, and then you have to say, okay, because of this, we are going to now use force in this area that would otherwise be a complete war crime. Otherwise, would be a vile, horrible thing.
Yeah, it still is. According to the Geneva Convention, even if they were working there, you don't have the right to summarily destroy the building or apparatus because of its stated goal, right? Like as a university or as a hospital, there are protected places that you just don't get to bomb, not legally, anyway.
You mentioned the 17 ships that were sidelined. I want to just a little bit to kind of touch on that for a second here, because it's also an issue here. It says it's a manpower shortage. And we know that, not only is all this equipment very expensive. You mentioned the salaries of, U.S. military personnel. But you also have, reports where there's not enough fire extinguishers to go around, and that safety measures outside of these large ships and things like that are not up to par. And I'm constantly seeing all of these different ads to be a Marine or join the Army or the Navy or whatever it may be. You do see the same thing. Do you see the Americans sort of having this issue with recruiting right now?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Because again, right, even throughout the different military apparatus, each of these branches have their own goals. You know what I'm saying? There's so many people that are going to join the Army. Well, if the Army doubles its recruitment goal, but the Navy doesn't meet theirs, then you can't say that those goals have been met, right? The Navy still has the amount of people that the Navy needs for its thing. My suspect is that most Americans, when they enlist, I mean, you normally go where your father went, or your uncle went. For me, most of my black family, they joined the army. You know what I'm saying? Because my father and his brothers and all, they were in the army. A lot of people join the Air Force because it's new and it's shiny, or that's what they assume. Some people are going to join the Space Force because it's the newest. It's Captain Kirk. It's, oh my God, right? Um, but the reality is, the Navy is kind of a place that, again, is kind of locked in a certain class status, right? Like kind of like an upper middle classy, I spent time in the yacht club. You already are okay with being on boats. It's a whole naval culture, at least as far as officers go. And so those are going to be the kind of things that you don't even have the kind of middle class anymore that has access to the kind of activities that would, that would predilect one to going and being in the Navy. So of course they're not meeting their goals as far as recruitment goes at all. American culture is different than it is in the 50s, and the Navy's prestige is in a different place than where it was in the 50s.
Um, the Army made an $11 million promotional deal with The Rock in the UFL. I don't know if you heard about this. Says when they did the the qualitative reporting. No, I think this is quantitative because it's numbers. But they said it didn't lead to a single recruit, and in 38 cases, recruits said they ended up delisting because of this. And it doesn't seem as if the United States really has much of a I don't know, marketing point to get young people into, the armed forces. I do remember during, 9/11 and the war on terror, not that that ever ended, but, there was people who were enlisting. And it was a big, I don't know, cultural moment for a lot of people who wanted to go to Iraq for some sort of, I don't know what their intentions or their thoughts were. I mean, if you watch, things like,
But you had a great cultural
Sniper.
moment, right? You had a great
Yeah.
cultural moment. You had an impetus, right? Right or wrong, the average American that enlisted felt like they were defending their country. And they felt like in some way or another, because of the lies and, I mean, wow. No, you can only say lies of the president and that administration. People associated Osama bin Laden with Saddam Hussein, which is truly a laughable thing. And it goes to show the gullibility of Americans. But at the same time, it's not to diminish their intentions. Their intentions were genuine. You had a great conflict, and it drove Americans to want to be patriotic, to want to do more, to defend their country, and to make sure something like this could never happen again. You don't have such a moment.
You don't have like a rallying point or a rallying cry. I think about
No one wants to go there and
how
die for Israel. I mean, no matter how these politicians feel about it, the Israelis that want to go over there and they join the IDF. But let's be honest, and we've talked about this for months. People are leaving Israel at a rate that is not sustainable. I mean, they're going back to Poland. They're going back to places in Europe. They're coming back to the United States. Bibi Netanyahu's son lives in the United States, man. They're reporting
partying in Miami.
right out of
He
the
just might
1,000.
slide to Miami.
Right, right. There were the 1,000 ultra orthodox that were drafted. 70 showed up. I mean,
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because we're seeing it doesn't seem like Hamas is becoming a smaller force. It seems like they're getting more and more people that want to join, Same thing with the Houthis, same thing with Hezbollah. The Russian military is larger today than it was 3 years ago before the special military operation. But we see here in the United States that what was it, a few weeks ago we talked about this, the automatic entering into the, I forget what they call it, the armed service reserves or whatever it may be, automatically register them. There it is, selective service. Yeah. To automatically, draft people into, a situation like this. I mean, we've been talking sort of about the cost and how the cost of military, just funding it, and not that we all, because when I think of it, I always think of like the F-35, right? The F-35 is like sort of doesn't work, and you think of that as like, okay, well, they made a mistake on that one. I mean, of course, that's still highly touted. Many people want the F-35, and many people consider it the wowie zowie, but let's be real, there's kinks to be worked out. So not only do you have like those bungles, but now you have this other price, which is the conflict in the Middle East right now. But let's also talk about this. Tons of equipment, tons of military expertise, intel that has been going into the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We now have this incursion, or whatever the heck you want to call it, in the Kursk, and it's now just seems as if it was a total waste of money, a total waste of manpower, a total waste of time, and Ukraine is again slowly losing the plot here. Is that the way you see it? And I mean, is this the way it goes here?
Look, again, right? Sun Tzu, know yourself, know your enemy. In 100 battles, you'll never be defeated, right? It's because of that you have to listen to what people say, even people maybe that you don't like. I listen to speeches from people I don't care for as a human being all the time, just because I want, at least from their own mouth, to hear what they say about things, right? And I say that to say the Russian stated goal as it relates to Ukraine has never changed. They want to demilitarize Ukraine. They want to denazify Ukraine. These are their stated goals. And they're using a war of attrition to do that. So you know what you have to do to keep me from reaching my goal? You have to hide your military, fight a guerrilla war, keep tanks all over the country. Don't keep them all masked up and put in one place. If you bring all your tanks and all your mobile rocket launch systems and your HIMARS and your artillery, and you put them in one place, you know what you just did? You made it that much easier for me to demilitarize you. And that's what's happening. Hundreds of military vessels, vessel is the wrong word, hundreds of military vehicles have been destroyed in the Kursk region, right? The advance has been halted, so it's no longer an advance. These people are pinned in from three sides. You have Ukrainian units that have been completely surrounded, right? I mean, this is not me spreading propaganda. This is the truth. You can look this up. You know what I'm saying? You cannot invade a nation of 150 million people with 20,000 people. That's foolhardy.
Are they Super Saiyans?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, what are you? Do you have a team of metahumans?
Yeah, so like it's just a math of the whole thing. Of course, you caught them off guard. You achieved the surprise condition, but now they're getting their round in the.
It's like if I punch John Jones in the face.
Wow.
Or
you did it. You
right.
Did it.
Tyson Fury or Francis Ngannou.
Surprise! You snuck him.
I snuck him.
Congratulations.
Now what? Now what's gonna happen? Did
he die? I mean,
yeah. I wanted to talk to you about this other thing, man, and this is something that's been on my mind. We haven't talked about this, or maybe we have, but we talk about the cost of war. We talked about manpower. We talk about cost, and we talk about all the things that are with that. But I feel like also culturally, the United States war machine has just worn out the welcome of sort of Americans in America. And I think people are really, really kind of finding it difficult to, kind of cling to like this, like Americana, the American exceptional America is this country on a hill or whatever it may be. It's like constantly hurting the United States. I don't know if you've thought about that or you see that, but I think in general, people are moving away from all the aspects of Western culture as well. I think it has to do with people just completely tired of the violence that they see every day and how the entire everything from television shows, from movies to the schools are taught. It just seems like this culture is so, bound to war.
Nothing's a real manifestation of anything that has any type of affectation on the average person's life, right? I remember a couple of months ago, watching the Republican National Convention and just laughing to myself about how out of touch it was to have Kid Rock up there, rah rah, and like, man, don't nobody care about Kid Rock. Like it's been over for 20 years. Fast forward to last week, Lil Jon out there yucking it up. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't really care about Lil Jon. It's been 20 years, right? Right? But of course, right? Donald Trump, when he's home alone, getting pumped up, he's listening to American Badass, and I presume we're supposed to believe that Miss Kamala is at home, listening to Lil Jon,
the Harris Waltz campaign, just getting down to a little
Waltz. I know
B.I.B.
And they're just trying to tap into something that but it's no longer relevant, man. I remember when they asked her who's her favorite rapper alive, and she was like Tupac, and they're like, Tupac is dead.
Did you just release some very secret government information?
Hey, now look, if she got files that say Tupac is still alive, I'm done. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to.
Right.
If she tell me where I could catch that new, Tupac album.
Right. You go by another name now or something like that. Yeah, no, the conventions were circus-like, and someone mentioned this. Oh, it's a circus and bread time, and someone was like, "Where's the bread?"
Right.
So it does seem like, again, I think the cultural moment also has to do with the idea that in America, people are deeply unserious. They're living a deeply unserious life. And we have major flashpoints, no DC universe, all over. The Kursk region they invaded Russia, for God's sakes. Israel is, how can you have self-defense, but you're being offensive?
Preemptive.
Yeah, that doesn't quite add up.
The New York Times last week dropping a story that secretly Biden, of not even mentally fit to continue his campaign, but somehow still fit enough to continue to be the president, right? Making this change in American nuclear policy that presumes China to be its preeminent enemy now. Where is this coming from? What would make us believe there's a need? And we're not talking about military structure. We're talking about, this was their nuclear policy that has been rearranged to presume China to be the most dangerous adversary to the United States. And for me, I'm just wondering, as an American, where is this coming from? Is China building bases in that's just not happening. There's no way to even presume these kind of things. And all you're left with is,
well, they're building cheap EVs, and we don't like that.
They're a damage to the hegemony.
They're building the Belt and Road, and that's taking away from our Navy dominance if you can just transport things on land. Right. And that's, it just goes back to the idea. They want to believe that the American consumer has nothing to worry about from China. It's the American oligarch that has a problem with what's happening. And again, I think China has the gaze of they have the culture right now. And I think a lot of other countries in the global majority and beyond are looking to China, not just as okay, this is a growing power, but it's cool. It's a cool place to live. It's the power.
And that's what America can't deal with, right? America, in its imagination of self, has to envision itself, much like Israel, as the primal power, right? The preeminent power. You have a question about what you should do with agriculture, you reach out to the FDA. You have a problem or question about what you should do with your drug policy, you reach out to the American DEA. Ask yourself, why is American DEA operating in places like Colombia at all? What possible jurisdiction could they have?
And I think the real biggest problem with China, and this is why ultimately they have to fail, is because I'm not saying China doesn't have a big military, but when's the last time they dropped a bomb? You look at the United States' policy. That's what this episode is about. You have spent so much of your manpower, of your tax base, So much of your cultural relevance and your projected strength around the world to not the Middle East. Again, we're talking about China. They're also in Taiwan, and now they're also want to be dealing with the Sahel states. They also want to claim that Venezuela's election was rigged. They also want to be in Bangladesh. They also and China is not in the world pulling coups. They're not doing those things. They're building a military for themselves, like Russia is, to protect themselves. And they're focusing on other aspects of their economy. In America, who's put all their time and money into financials, really to make themselves rich, to rig the system, economic hit jobs all around the global south, making Europe dependent upon them militarily. And that was their plan. And now that plan has failed and it's not working. And places like China and their coalition are winning everywhere you turn.
Forces that are pulling at the threads at the same time, right? And they're not acting as client states in a way which would allow America to manage these conflicts, right? They're being moved by their partners. Israel is moving American foreign policy because America says things like, our support for Israel is ironclad. So if my friend hits you, you know what it is. I got my friends back. You know, Ukraine is a client state. So if they invade or any of these things, have incursions, wild romps in the Russian countryside with a few tanks, why are you making such a big deal of it? But all of this goes back to, once again, analysis that we had given. This is what it meant when everyone was sitting down asking Biden, are you okay with American weapons being used in Russia? We had this conversation on this channel more than a month ago. Everyone thought that meant, oh, Russia fires over the border. Well, we fire back and we hit what that Russian location was, when the reality was that was actually Biden giving tacit support to continue to allow this planning for this incursion, right? Invasion, incursion, infestation of Ukrainians. We're going to land on looks like the infestation is being.
It's not going to matter because it looks like the landing spot is going to be the Russians back on their land, and there's not going to be any Ukrainians left in that area.
On it,
Yeah, but it goes to this idea: is like, if you're saying that you are upset that Russia is taking land and Russia is attacking, and you want to stop that, why would you then go and say, okay, well, Ukraine taking Russia land is also good? And it just goes to the hypocrisy over and over again.
Defend itself, right? Every American client state has the right to defend itself, especially if they're buying arms from us, because we got the right to sell it. It's like, if they don't got that license themselves,
right?
They might not have a right to buy these things, and again, there are books that are on the table that exist that are made to prevent exactly this kind of thing from happening. America legally shouldn't be sending weapons to Israel or Ukraine based upon their human rights records, right? But you have the song and dance where Republicans act like they don't know. Democrats act like they don't know, even though people from the American Secretary, the State Department, continue to resign en masse, saying, I came to work for this government because I felt like they represented these values. And these are the biggest losses to Americana, because these are the true believers. These are the people that have given significant portions of their life to go and write these policies in America, and this is the death of diplomacy as much as the death of American primacy, militarily or otherwise.
Yeah, great points. I think that's a great place to jump off. I wanted to ask you before we wrapped up, if there's anything else you wanted to mention.
I would just like to say, for all those naysayers out there that were very, very hyped up about the Venezuelan elections, the Venezuelan Supreme Court, which is not controlled by Maduro, right, stands alone as its own institution of government, certified that the Maduro campaign is the legal winner of the election.
Man, I can't believe the United States State Department was wrong about an election. It's just, how could they have let this happen?
We see you.
Yo, stop showing yourself so
Stop showing-
easily.
Just say you love the Empire. Just wear the T-shirt and wave your flag and shut up and let the grown-ups talk.
Thank you very much. I want to give a big shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment below. We love to, see what your thoughts are. Even if you're a troll and you want to say something mean, you're not going to hurt my feelings because we don't worry too much about feelings. We're here about receipts, and proof is in the pudding, as they say. I want to give a shout out to.
Show up. We can talk about that too.
Very well, okay. James Silent Bob moment. All right. I want to say, hey, if you want to support it, we're on Patreon. You see the ticker below. I'm not gonna, hit you over the head with it, but we the real broke leftists out here trying to make big things happen. So hit us up on the Patreon. I want to show love to our patrons: Kelly, Dubsy22, Nicole, J Goulart 94, No Ground, RK, Paula, Lissa, Suzette, Dennis. Did I miss anybody? No. Oh, and Lauren. Thank you, Lauren B. Much love to y'all for Emoji Little Tanky Summer. I'm Amin TMK. Air Inner City Left. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.